Hello, everybody. This is Will. Um, Jim is in Geneva, Switzerland, and he is just sent me a message saying he is trying to make connections to join us. Hopefully, he will in a few moments. Uh, for those of you who are participating for credit, if in fact, everybody, if you'll go down and click on chat at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll notice that I put a message there. Whoops, it's not there right now because I checked in.
Will,
So,
I'll send that out again. I'll send that out again.
okay, Dan is going to send out the message, but what I'm inviting you to do, particularly if you're taking the course for credit, but really for everybody, it will help our discussion at the close of our time together today if you'll write out as you go along any questions that occur to you or comments. And especially I'm interested in your relating this material to your own life and times. So there's some experiential juice for you as we go along. The title of my presentation today or teaching is The Implicate Einstein. What I mean by that phrase is intricate. The implicate is indeed intricate. The Einstein I want to explore is the one Isaacson and other biographers largely miss. It's not that they don't report historical facts, they do. But what they don't do is notice an archetypal set of implication in Einstein's life and work. The biographers, most of them, like much of academic 20th century, live with the illusion of objectivity. No wonder they miss this important implicate Einstein, because Einstein himself speaks of this dimension of his life hardly at all, as I'm sure you noticed in reading his autobiography. He does allude to his implications throughout his various writings, but the hidden Einstein is easy to miss. In my estimation, neither Einstein's autobiography or the many biographies are great books. They're really not. But to be sure, Einstein himself is great. That's why I suggested that we read these books. And by the way, one of you asked a question a couple of weeks ago as to why Jim and I and other presenters don't follow more closely the books we've asked you to read. So it's a good question. But really, we expect that you would read the material as background to our explorations in our time together. And beyond that, we have to look beneath the surface of these books to profound currents flowing through to probe, in this case, the greatness of Einstein himself. To see what I mean by the implicate Einstein in a beginning way, let's revisit a few of the highlights from last month's teaching that I gave. We saw that Einstein did not speak usual human language until he was into his fourth year. What utterances the adult world heard were, quote, garbled words. They heard him talking, but they assumed he was talking to himself unintelligibly. I proposed, you remember, that he actually might be talking with the unseen world in a mother tongue forgotten by the adult world. Next, we saw that Einstein formed a nature-based community in the city of Bern called the Olympic Club. I proposed that it was the interaction of these humans with the untamed region of Lake Thun and the Swiss Alps that created the special theory of relativity. Whoa, that's a startling proposal. But wait, it gets even more brain-boggling. I propose that Einstein's genius is not that of an individual, but one embedded in the natural order. I propose that Einstein opened the door to mending the split mind produced by our current global schizoid civilization, a civilization that is dying in our midst. And he opened the door not only through his science, but through his hidden natural practices. No wonder we don't apprehend the implicate Einstein through one or two of his biographies. The authors are simply like us. We are all captured by our culture's memes and scripts. The very notion that our eco fields are behind his genius shakes us like an archetypal dream. Such a notion challenges the very foundations of everything we have been taught. Reflecting on Einstein and other matters, one of my heroes, Gregory Bateson, the great anthropologist, got it right when he wrote, "Mind and nature are a necessary unity. They are not separate. We are not separate. We are, in the end of things, fundamentally intertwined in a mosaic whole that we give the word nature." This proposal of mine turns us upside down, does it not? There's nothing I'm saying that is ever created by an individual. There are no theories. There are no equations. There are no houses, no bridges, no poems, no works of arts, nothing, absolutely nothing by an individual. Everything emerges from a network of relationships. Goodbye, Ayn Rand. Goodbye, John Wayne. And hello, implicate Einstein. As a further note of introduction, let's turn to comments in last month's discussion. I've referenced Jim Garrison's comments that Gautama Buddha intuited a reality similar to Einstein. Take the equation, E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. In my view, Buddha spent most of his journey on the energy side of the equation and moved gently toward the mass and light squared side. Einstein, on the other hand, started with a ride on a beam of light and the mass side of the equation and moved toward the implicate side of energy. They met in the middle, or somewhat in the middle. I do want to make the following points, hopefully to enhance our discussion. Einstein was a master of the material or the manifested universe and only had implicate visions of the unseen. He was never really comfortable with exploring the unseen or the spiritual, though he made occasional comments. Buddha was a master of emptiness or the unseen and never really trusted the sensual delight of nature's pleasures. In fact, at the heart of Buddha's teaching was the notion of dukkha, the illusion of clinging. Clinging to what? The sensate world, which he saw as illusory. That is the source of suffering from which we need to be liberated. In short, Buddha was suspicious of the material world, which he saw as an entrapment. Yet both these luminaries, Buddha and Einstein, sought to heal the split in our culture. And that is their marvelous connection. Jim and I are considering offering an intensive next year in the creation of a new civilization to explore Buddha and Einstein and how they might open the door for our new civilization. Perhaps we can discuss it further today as well. But for now, I propose that the implicate Einstein was a person through whom the natural order opened a door to heal the split mind, the schizophrenic nature of our civilization. Now let's pause for a moment. Let's see how, by walking barefooted through the door, leads us to the implicate Einstein. Yes, to understand Einstein, you may have to take off your shoes. The barefoot Einstein. You read in Isaacson about Einstein's barefoot escapades. It is well known that as a child, he didn't like to wear shoes, even though he grew up in cold and damp climates such as Germany, northern Italy, and then Switzerland. We know that he went with the cadre of nature lovers to Lake Thun in Switzerland and took off his shoes and put his feet in icy glacial waters as if he was drawing something from the waters. Maybe information. We know that his first wife objected to his constant walking around barefooted, especially in the winter. He would not listen to her. When he completed his 2 theories of relativity, the last of which was in 1915, he took a long vacation to the chilly waters of the coast of the Baltic Sea. There he proclaimed, after several days of having his shoes off, walking on the beach, that walking barefooted was much better than wearing shoes. And thereafter, he wore shoes only when required. His second wife constantly scolded him for walking barefooted. She was vulnerable about this great man catching pneumonia. Who wouldn't be? When the two of them moved to Princeton, New Jersey, it was no better. He was untamed by convention. Sometimes he even walked in the snow. Students smirked, Ivy League as they were, as he strolled across the campus in the winter. On rare occasions that he did teach, he didn't really like to teach, but on a rare occasion that he did, he sometimes would come to class barefooted. At other times, he showed up to receive important awards without his shoes. Unfortunately, his biographers saw this practice as only an eccentricity, a behavior of an endearingly idiosyncratic man that just didn't look deeper. But that's something you and I can do right now. Suppose that Einstein intuited the connection between being barefoot and the rich electromagnetic powers of the soil of the earth. Suppose he intuited a direct connection with the informational resources of what would later be called the morphogenetic field. Suppose he, like many indigenous people before him, knew intuitively that something was transmitted through the electromagnetic field, passing up through the bottom of his feet, the various energy centers in the body, the throat, the head, the crown. Suppose that his intestines, his heart, and his skull brain work better when the fields, including gravity, move freely through his body without rubber soles blocking the pathway. Now here's my shoe. Look at all the rubber here. I got my shoes off, so I can't complain if I'm not having something come through the bottom of my feet. So it's okay with me, and if it's okay with you, you can take off your shoes for the rest of our time together today. We'll call this a barefoot exploration. Now let's continue to explore Einstein's bridge from special relativity to general relativity. As we journey into this phase of Einstein's theories, keep in mind his statement. Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. General relativity. Return to the trampoline. In 1905, Einstein determined that the laws of physics are the same for all non-accelerating observers, and that the speed of light in a vacuum was independent of the motion of all observers. This was the theory of special relativity, as we saw last month. It introduced a new framework for physics and proposed new concepts of space and time. Everything, he says, is moving relative to everything else as long as the second point is stationary. You recall my example of the train. So you and I are sitting with Einstein on the side of the hill, and here comes a train in the distance. It goes, ooh. So we are fixed, but the sound is relative to where we are fixed. That's why it's called the special theory of relativity. Einstein then spent 10 years trying to include acceleration in the theory and published his theory of general relativity in 1915. If you moved with the train, he said, would relativity still apply? As he worked out the equations for his general theory, Einstein realized that massive objects caused a distortion in the space-time fabric. So I said, you as a mass step out onto the trampoline and create a dimple in the trampoline, an indentation. So a golf ball rolling around at the edge will eventually roll toward you in much the same way that planet Earth pulls at rocks in space. This trampoline analogy shows us that gravity results from massive objects warping space-time. The warp or indentation is called a gravity well. If you look at gravity in action, it looks a little like a sinkhole in the landscape. Maybe that is why sinkholes in the landscape are so cherished by ancient people. And this is how Einstein figured out the gravitational field. Things don't so much as fall as space itself falls and indents. That means, now I want you to hold on to your hat here. If you step off a chair, you don't, according to Einstein, fall to the ground. Rather, space-time itself falls in response to your mass. See what I mean? Einstein opens doors to a reality that disturbs us, disturbs our worldview, disturbs our pattern of perceiving. But Einstein had a problem with these theories. At the time, there were no instruments that could see or measure space-time. He constructed this whole thing around his thought experiments and mathematical equations. You could perceive this astounding discovery in the usual way. You could say, well, here's a very bright guy being creative. Or you could consider my proposal that the quantum fields themselves were commingling with his brilliance and imparting information as they moved through him. And did he somehow know that the contact of his bare feet provided a gateway for this pass-through of information? Now, I'm going to check something here. I asked you that question. I'm going to say, yeah, we have some of you are actually writing down questions and comments. I want to propose further that these downloads from the field come through to humans throughout Earth at crucial times. It's likely that several humans around the globe were receiving these relativity downloads at approximately the same time as Einstein. But he had the skills and ego strength to translate them into a workable scientific reality. Along this line of field downloads, once I was in a nature-based vision quest encampment. One of the questers came in after several days of fasting and reported a mathematical equation that had come to him in vision. This surprised me because in the middle of the previous night, Judith and I had awakened in our tent because I was making some noise in my sleep. I had told her that I was receiving mathematical equations in my dreams, elaborate equations that made little sense to me. When I shared the equations I had received with the vision quester, we found that, lo and behold, the very equations he had received out in his vision sight a mile or two away were the same ones that I had received. However, neither of us had the skills to translate the meaning of these equations into a usable reality. We laughed and wondered if someone at a nearby university might have received the equation and known what to do with them. More on math as a mother tongue in a moment. An expanding and evolving universe. As we all know, humans have considered throughout Western history that the universe is static, even absolute. Such a view began to unravel with the Toltecs, who discovered hints of an expanding and changing universe 2,500 years before Copernicus. But Europeans and European Americans generally think that the first human to discover that a static Earth is not the center of the entire universe, they like to think that it was Copernicus. So let us humor that perspective, even though it's not true. 500 years after Copernicus, Einstein came on the scene. Just after the miracle year of special relativity in 1905, Jacob Kapteyn observed that the sun is the center of a spinning galaxy of stars, making up a constellation that he called by the phrase, you know what it was? The Milky Way. Keep in mind, Einstein did not know about the Milky Way when he proposed special relativity. Then in 1915, he came out with general relativity, and 2 years later, humanity suffered another blow to its pride when Curtis Shapley revealed that we are not even the center of the Milky Way, but merely a tiny solar system at the edge of a massive galactic arm. Evidence against the static universe was mounting, but still Einstein and all the other scientists were scrambling to defend a homeostatic closed system universe. More on this toward the end of our teaching today. In 1929, 14 years after Einstein's general theory was published, Edwin Hubble discovered something that astounded all of humanity. His discoveries with his telescope proved Einstein's relativity theories were accurate, but also these discoveries disturbed Einstein to no end. With the benefit of improved telescopes, Hubble started to notice that light coming from distant galaxies was shifted a little towards the red end of the spectrum due to the Doppler effect. And he called this the red shift, which indicated that the galaxies, hold on to your hat again, the galaxies were moving away from us. Analysis of the red shifts of a special class of stars he called the Cepheids, which have specific properties making them useful as standard candles or distance markers. See, that's how he could tell that they were moving away from us. Hubble concluded that the galaxies and clusters were flying apart at great speeds, and that the universe was therefore definitively growing in size. In effect, all the galaxies we see are slightly red in color due to this phenomenon called the redshift. Hubble showed that in our expanding universe, every galaxy is rushing away with a speed which is in direct proportion to its distance, known as Hubble's law. So that a galaxy that is twice as far away as another is receding twice as fast. One 10 times away recedes 10 times as fast, and so on. The old model of a static universe, which had survived for 200 years since Isaac Newton, was thus proved to be incontrovertibly false. But Hubble's discovery did more than just show that the universe was changing over time. It was even a bigger discovery. If the galaxies were flying apart, then clearly at some earlier time, the universe was smaller than at present. Following back logically, like a movie played in reverse, it must ultimately have had a beginning when it was very tiny indeed, an idea which gave rise to the theory that came to be known as the Big Bang. Although now almost universally accepted, this theory of the beginnings of the universe was not welcome. It was by Einstein. Einstein heard about these results from the discoveries of the telescope. And on the one hand, he was really elated that his theories were supported. But on the other side, and paradoxically, he was considerably disturbed because his view of an orderly universe was now shaken. He struggled with whether he wanted to see the results. But ultimately, he could do no other, scientist that he was. In the early 1930s, he traveled to California. More about that in a minute. He met with Hubble. He went up to Mount Wilson, to the observatory. He actually looked through the telescope. He digested massive data coming in through this instrument. While looking through the telescope, Einstein actually got angry. I saw a photo of him doing this, and I meant to have it for you. But he was really upset. And just as general theory was published, he had added onto his equations to support a static universe something he called the cosmological constant. He tacked on some additional math, even though it seemed forced and not intuitive. Had he not forced his equations to support a static universe with his cosmological constant, he could have predicted Hubble's findings to the nth degree. Observers say that if he had not added this on, he would have received a second and maybe a third Nobel Prize. In the same way, for example, that the CERN scientists in 2012, with their experimental discovery of the Higgs boson that won Peter Higgs the Nobel Prize in 2013, discussed, Einstein exclaimed after his Mount Wilson visit, "If there is no static universe, then away with my cosmological constant." And he dropped it off forever thereafter. Now, I just used a term, the cosmological constant. Let's explore that for a moment to move deep into Einstein's implicate mind and his deeper character, not always apparent. The cosmological constant. By now, we can see Einstein was vigorously defending the paradigm of the static universe. He started out as a revolutionary, but had succumbed to the status quo of the prevailing paradigm. When Einstein published the general theory in 1915, it was a second and very large shockwave to the scientific community. To Einstein's chagrin, it was not widely accepted for one simple reason. The theories of relativity predicted an expanding and changing universe. Such a notion went entirely against the very foundations of physics at the time. It stated that, as I just said, Isaac Newton was wrong. Who could question Isaac Newton? Einstein birthed these two theories in a burst of co-creativity with the quantum fields. But lo and behold, he himself did not fully embrace the implications of his discoveries. Slowly, though, Einstein realized the implications of his theories, and it caused him great difficulty. He had birthed a powerful vision of the manifest universe without being fully conscious of what he was doing. It was as if an unseen midwife from the web of fields was bringing forth a new vision in him, moving against the current of his own worldview. The relativity equations and thought experiments came upon him as if it were coming from outside himself. And in a very real way, Einstein was beside himself. Indeed, he was not happy because the visionary theories that he gave birth to challenged his own personal faith, his own philosophy. Like Plato, he believed in a beautiful, orderly universe. But here his theory was pointing to a universe that had messy, unorganized, uncertain dimensions. For 2 years, he agonized over his equations. Damn those equations, he said to himself. They must be wrong. For 2 years, Einstein agonized as it became more and more apparent that his theories went against all of modern science and also the views of the major religions of the world, that God is unchanging. So, in 1917, he gave in. It was as if he went to the back of the book in his algebra book and looked for an answer. He added on to the original brilliant equation what was to become known as the cosmological constant. And it was symbolized by the Greek letter lambda. His add-on to his equations allowed for a static and fully ordered universe. He relaxed. This was great, he said. God's in his heaven and all right with the world, or all right with the universe. And when he published this cosmological constant, the firestorm of scientific objections settled down. Scientists knew that Einstein was important, but his relativity theories were controversial. And so, settling down in 1922, they awarded him the Nobel Prize, but not for relativity, rather for, quote, his services to theoretical physics. They could not bring themselves even to mention the relativity theories when they gave him the Nobel Prize. So that was 1922. 7 more years of avoiding the implications of Einstein to himself passed. And as I said, the storm died down. And even more because he placated himself. And he placated the establishment with this little add-on that made things perfectly okay. But then came Hubble's telescope. And the data that came in as these guys viewed through the telescope brought down the house of cards with this astonishing view of an expanding and dynamic universe. Einstein would say, damn the lambda. Tacking that equation on was the biggest mistake of my life. But hold on. Was it a mistake? We'll see in a few minutes that it may not have been. looking through the telescope. You may recall a similar phenomenon erupted when Galileo was tried in 1633 for stating that the sun was the center of the known universe and that the earth rotated around the sun. Galileo was 70 years old at the time, so he was not wanting to spend the rest of his life in prison. He invented a telescope that magnified object in space by 20 times. Now, the telescope was about 18 inches long, about like this. With this telescope, he was able not only to see the craters of the moon, but also look directly at 4 satellites of Jupiter. His discoveries confirmed Copernicus' theories in much the same way that Hubble confirmed Einstein's theories. That is what made Galileo so dangerous to the status quo, the prevailing paradigm of the Roman Catholic Church. In his defense, Galileo asked the legal team of the Pope to do one thing. All they had to do was to look through his telescope. That would settle the theoretical argument. He said, let's take this thing out of discussion. All you guys have to do is look through the telescope, and you can see the supernovas. You can see the satellites around Jupiter. They could see that the universe was not what it appeared to be to the naked eye, and it was not what the Bible described. But the Pope and his minions refused to look through the telescope. They did not want the truth. To Einstein's credit, he did want the truth. He did look through the telescope. He did see what he needed to see. We are not the center of the Milky Way. The Milky Way is not the center of the galaxies, and the whole enterprise is not a static thing, but a mass of expanding creativity. A visit to the Hopi House in the Grand Canyon. On his way back across North America, after looking through Hubble's telescope on Mount Wilson, Einstein was a mess. He was a mess. He stopped to visit with indigenous elders on the rim of the Grand Canyon. He was licking his soul and heart wounds. There's a touching photo of him, which we'll see in a minute, with Hopi elders holding the hand where Einstein was holding the hand of a native girl about 4 years old. Einstein, in the photo, Einstein has just completed a ceremony where he was gifted a sacred pipe and donned a headdress of eagle feathers. The Hopi, in fact, gave him a nature-based tribal name. Here's the name. They said, Einstein, your name for this leg of the journey, the Great Relative. They honored him with this name, even though they knew nothing about his theories. They knew nothing of his reputation. They knew nothing of his science. They experienced his inner spirit, and they grokked his core essence. And the name came up for them, Great Relative. They said the spirit world gave them his name. The gift of the name has been a hot potato for most biographers who doubt that it was meant anything to Einstein. They doubt its authenticity at times. It's okay to doubt, but let's look deeper with respectful eyes. Imagine for a moment a drummer with a chant from a large ceremonial drum. Imagine an elder with wrinkled face handing Einstein a sacred pipe. Imagine the elders putting a headdress of eagle feathers on his head. Imagine a little girl reaching up to grasp his hand. Was this the start of a bending back of science toward primordial wisdom? Was the young female and the sacred pipe and emergence of the divine feminine, reaching out to grasp the hand of a civilization gone awry. Did the divine feminine know that this very human, this man, would make the atomic bomb possible, and that global civilization would hang by a slender thread? You can think what you like, but the Hopi prophecies gave these elders a powerful context for making such decisions. They saw Einstein as the hinge of the human story. So take a look here. So just take that in for a moment. I hope you're able to see this. You can see Einstein holding the sacred pipe. You can see a couple of men who seem uninterested. His wife looks a little quizzical. You see the little girl. You see the Hopi elders. Just take that in for a moment. And I want to show you another one. So this one is one I really like. It almost looks like it's been photoshopped, but I found it in an obscure reference in an Albuquerque library for Native Americans, and it's supposedly authentic. But look at the expression on Einstein's face. You can almost see the perplexed, quizzical look that his universe has been upset, and yet he's interacting here in some way that we don't exactly know what's going on with him, but something, I believe, that's important. Einstein was at a crossroads in his life. He received the Nobel Prize. And at the same time, his worldview of an orderly, law-abiding universe was shattered. It is not a stretch to consider that this holding of the hand of a Hopi child, but also the receiving of an honored name, points him to a greater confluence of two great rivers, that of the neuroscience and primordial wisdom. Perhaps Einstein was searching for moorings since his foundation had been shaken. I've pondered this important moment in Einstein's life for many years, and I'm likely to suggest one of our great books for next year as being the Book of Hopi Prophecy. This link is tantalizing between Einstein and the Hopi. Again, biographers have trouble with the photo and with the possibility that Albert Einstein became an honorary member of their tribe. So most historians spend much time trying to debunk the event. But the photos don't lie. The oral tradition of the native people about this moment don't lie. And the elders did see Einstein as a crack in the opening of a door to a new world. Boating on the waters of consciousness. Before World War II dispossessed Einstein of his home and possession and turned him into the world's most celebrated refugees. I'm laughing because I'm wondering if we want to vet Einstein if he were one of the immigrants trying to come into our country. Einstein used to putter at every opportunity aboard his pride and joy 21-foot sloop, a boat called the Tumbler, that had been given to him by friends on his 50th birthday. Sailed his boat out of his summer house in Kaputh, Germany, until 1933, when the Gestapo seized all his property. After moving to the United States, Einstein owned another boat, a 15-foot dinghy that he sailed around in the waters of New England. He especially loved to sail on Lake Carnegie. Some reports say he was a very good sailor, barreling pell-mell toward other boats, only to turn away laughing at precisely the last instance. Other observers cite that those maneuvers were a testament to a certain happy-go-lucky seafaring ineptitude, adding also that Einstein was known periodically to run aground on the same sandbar several hundred yards from his house. It has struck many observers as strange that a man of such great and precise thinking could so enjoy boating, which involves constantly varying and unpredictable factors like wind and tides and waves. I myself speculate that perhaps a little chaos might have just been what he needed to release him from the rigid structure of his scientific paradigm. But release him to what and how? Let's pause for a moment and explore my hypothesis. If you look at the implicate Einstein, you can see that he stayed close to his relationship with lakes and other forms of water. Did Lake Thun actually channel special relativity? Did his boat in Germany and in New Jersey keep him linked to the waters of deeper consciousness? Like his barefooted consciousness practice, did he intuitively know that the feel of wind on his face and in his sail, the sound of water as his boat knifed through the water, the taste of salt in his mouth, all parted, not only inspiration, not only communion, but information? Recall that Carl Jung also had a relationship with a series of lakes. Most interpreters, most historians of both these giants of the 20th century simply see that this relationship with water was recreation. Yes, maybe, but maybe recreation, as in co-creation, as in collaboration with the intimacy of the web of ecofields. Supporting my hypothesis are observations by Rudolf Kaiser, the husband of Einstein's stepdaughter. He wrote in a biography that he wrote about Einstein, quote, "While Einstein's hand holds the rudder, he explains with joy his latest scientific ideas to the people on the boat with him. He sails the boat with skill and fearlessness, the skill and fearlessness of a child. He himself hoists the sails, climbs around on the sailing boat to tighten the tows and ropes and handlebars and hooks to set sails. The joy with this hobby can be seen in his face. It echoes in his words. It echoes in his science. It echoes in his happy smile." Once again, we encounter a man in a nature-based community deeply connected with the waters of consciousness. And lo and behold, the implicate Einstein is revealed to us in subtle patterns. In 1933, Albert moved from Germany to Princeton, New Jersey, and remained there for the 22 years of his life. He loved the web of ecofields there. He found his life, as he put it, indescribably joyful. He had his office in Fine Hall on the Princeton campus, a building that contained several decorative tributes to his genius. One of them said simply, in stained glass, "The highest God is subtle, but he is not living." They choose that quote, a marvelous quotation. Let's stand beside that quotation for a moment and unpack it. Shortly after Einstein arrived in 1931, the administration of Princeton University decided to award him with an honorary PhD. At the time, it was the practice of Princeton to grill the honoree in his subject to see if he or she was worthy of receiving the degree. When they approached Einstein and told him that he would be honored, but also would have to be questioned in the defense of his two theories, he told them he would need to meditate on the possibility. Shortly thereafter, the administrators and faculty approached him again And with a twinkle in his eye, Einstein said, "Okay, I'm willing to be examined, but I wonder who on the faculty knows enough to question me." Embarrassed, they backed off their requirement. The incident points to Einstein's hunger for companionship on his journey. It was funny, yeah, but he wanted someone who actually knew enough to talk to him about what was most important. His desire for deep companionship would soon be supplied when David Bohm, perhaps the brightest light among the younger physicists, moved to Princeton from California, where he had been engaging in doctoral research at the University of California at Berkeley. Einstein and David Bohm. When Bohm moved to Princeton from California, he took a room in the house next door to Einstein. The two men met and became very close. Einstein told Bohm's fiancée, Hannah Lowy, that he looked on the younger man as, quote, "my spiritual son." Both Bohm and Einstein had many discussions and exchanges, but on one matter they could never agree. Einstein felt that, quote, these are Einstein's words, that the good Lord was subtle, but not malicious, and therefore it would be possible to eventually uncover the ultimate level of order and reality, something hidden beneath the quantum and relativistic theories, which would be the final theories for physics and even philosophy, the grand unified theory. But his spiritual son, David Bohm, spiritedly disagreed. He pointed out that for 200 years, quantum theory had laid hidden underneath the oppression of Newtonian physics. Beneath quantum theory, said Bohm, there would be another, deeper theory, and below that one would be another. For Bohm, reality was inexhaustible and dynamic, not static. Reality is, said Bohm, an unbroken whole seeking to move coherently through the fermentation of disorder, to enfold in our midst as possibility, but dynamic always. Einstein listened, but he disagreed. As I was reading some of Einstein's disagreement, I thought he could have sung this old Protestant hymn, "Change and decay all around I see. O thou who changest not, abide with me." And so it would be that Albert Einstein would die believing in an orderly universe. The atomic bomb and Einstein's inner council of selves. Like all of us, Einstein consists of a community of subcells, a council of subpersonalities. Here's a brief acknowledgement of Einstein's choir of selves, singing in harmony much of the time. Here are some of them. The intuitive child, the brilliant scientist, the nature-based wild man with hair going in every direction, the difficult husband, the pacifist, the refugee, the contributor to the development of the atomic bomb, the peacemaker, the revolutionary scientist, the defender of the status quo. Like all of us, Einstein held these aspects of himself on a teeter-totter, a seesaw that tipped first one way and then another. He, like all of us, sought balance, and sometimes he achieved it, but sometimes not. Let's consider in conclusion some of the opposites pulling within Einstein. On the one side is the thoroughgoing passive. On the other side is the part of him who wrote Roosevelt urging the development of the atomic bomb. On the one side is the person who opposed the dropping of the bomb on Hiroshima. But on the other side is a part of him who would drop the bomb on Germany. On one side is the revolutionary scientist who gave us the theories of relativity, But on the other side is his fear of a universe that had strands of disorder and even chaos. On one side is the untamed, barefoot speaker of a mother tongue. And on the other side is a sophisticated musician playing both the violin and the piano. On the one side of the teeter-totter, he wrote these words: I want to know how God created this world. I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon. I want to know God's thought. The rest are merely details. But on the other side of the teeter-totter, he wrote, I don't even believe in a personal God. On one side, he wrote, the mystical trend of our time, which shows itself in theosophy and spiritualism, is for me no more than a symptom of a weak mind. On the other side, he wrote, the most beautiful and most profound experience is the sensation of the mystical. It is the soul of all true science, is mystics. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. To know that what is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty which our dull faculties can comprehend only in their primitive forms. This feeling is the center of all true religiousness. In the end, perhaps our greatest lies in its being a mirror of our own limitations and our own greatness. Perhaps we're drawn to his skepticism and yet also to his unwavering belief in order and harmony. Perhaps we're drawn to his brilliance and creativity, but we're also drawn to his resistance to change. Perhaps we're drawn to struggle, as he did, to find some balance of opposites between the beauty of order and the terror of disorder. In him we see our possibility to feel the tension of a complex world of opposites that somehow give birth to a deeper unity. In him we can become, like David Bohm, his spiritual sons and daughters, who work assiduously at allowing our shadow implicates to become explicate, at allowing our inner scientists to lie down with our inner mystics, to conceive an offspring for a new day wherein we can make the hard ethical decisions facing our world of chaos and disorder. And we trust a deeper coherence emerging in our midst as we open our eyes to the deep spirit nature of our beautiful universe. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. You also can add comments right now if you go down to the chat. Constantina asked this question. Will, do you know if Einstein himself ever commented on the intelligence inherent within the earth? And did he ever specifically make reference to the mother tongue in any way or claim to have any sort of communication with the intelligence of Gaia? Well, you know, it's interesting. The short answer to that is he was not explicit about that, but rather, as the theme of my lecture has been, his was an implicate. He implied so much of this, but he did speak often of some dimension of the universe that seemed to be coming through to him in an inspiring way. And he sometimes said that numbers were the language of God. And there's a little hint of that in his autobiography, where he tries to tell us about himself through mathematical symbols, which, by the way, I didn't get. But so I don't know. Einstein was from an earlier generation, and he had not yet made explicit what we're now struggling with. As you know, yesterday in a lecture that I gave in neuroscience, I pointed out that in the 1990s, they discovered dark matter and dark energy. And dark matter and dark energy comprise 95% of the universe. And the universe that Einstein explored really only comprises 5% of the universe. And I really wondered what it would be like for him if he knew that he was only working with 5% of the universe. And you recall yesterday I was proposing that we refer to our own brains as having dark gray matter and white matter. And I was wondering if dark matter and dark energy are actually the neural capacities of the universe, the explicit neural capacity of the universe. So as I wonder that aloud, I called to my mind the cosmological constant, which I had more in my lecture, but we were running out of time. So I'll just give part of it now.
That's fine.
No, I really think, see, when Einstein added on the cosmological constant, he did that so the universe would be more orderly and to him more beautiful. And so when they viewed through the Hubble telescope in 1929 and saw that the universe was expanding, he did away with the cosmological constant. But in 1990s, the scientists noticed that his equations seemed to fit the universe that was being revealed as having 95% dark matter and dark energy. Not completely, but close. And you remember in 1905, when he said, talking about the special theory of relativity, up until that time, scientists had thought the universe was peopled by a liquid called ether. You remember that? So when he published the special theory of relativity, he did away with ether. He said, we don't need it. It inhibits the speed of light. But now we see that the universe is filled with dark matter and dark energy. And some scientists actually say this is kind of a liquid, and they have a name for it. They call it quintessence. Quintessence is the force of dark energy that's moving the universe. So I can speculate perhaps that Einstein might have seen that as the mother tongue, as I do. At least I like to think that.
Thanks, Will. That's great.
Okay, then also while I'm talking with you, Constantina, so you had another question. You said, I'm surprised he had shoes on in that setting, but then again, I noticed that First Peoples around him did as well. I suppose they needed foot protection in the ecofields I lived in. Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I hadn't noticed that. That's a really interesting point. I probably overstated his taking off his shoes, but it is true that many biographers said he pretty much spent a good part of his adult life walking around barefooted.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, Will? He probably did most definitely interact in the mother tongue as an adult. But like the rest of us, we're not running around telling everybody that this is what we do on a regular basis. So he most likely did. If anyone, it would have been him.
Yeah. Well, you can get in his stories, particularly on his 18-mile hikes with his little cadre of mathematicians when they went up to Lake Thune, that you can really tell that they were deeply immersed in
Yes.
communicating with the waters, and you can imagine these massive mountains around them, and
Mm,
and it's really quite inspiring.
Well, thank you, Will. Wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So let's see. Do we have any other? We have Lily.
Hello, William.
Hello. Did you have a question or a comment?
I was fascinated when you were talking about jumping off of a chair and that we're actually not falling, that the space time is warping. And it's
Yeah.
not something we can actually visualize, and we can't see it with the naked eye. And it was like, that's fascinating to me. And so more talk about space time would be really fun to hear.
Well, I'm like Einstein's colleagues at Princeton. I'm not sure I know enough to question him.
Me either.
But if you can imagine, so this is a trampoline, and trampoline represents the fabric of space-time. So Lily is over here at the side sitting in a chair. And so you jump off of the chair. And when you jump off the chair, space-time dips down into what's called a gravity well. That's a scientific term.
Uh-huh.
So you actually are making an indentation on gravity. And so when your mass, you don't weigh very much, but when your mass moves down into the fabric of space-time, then that's what pulls you down. The interaction of your mass with the fabric is what pulls you down. It's not something underneath like Isaac Newton thought that pulled down the apple. It's not a force that pulled. The apple actually makes an indentation called a gravity well.
Fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Okay, so let's move on. Beverly Strait. And tell us where you are in Canada.
I'm on the Sunshine Coast in British Columbia.
Oh, good.
Sunshine Coast is it's just up from Vancouver, and this is my view.
Good, good. There's a lake, that's a theme with Carl Jung, and a theme with Einstein. The theme is not that they communed with lakes, but that lakes actually imparted information to them, according to me.
Right. Yes. Well, I know, and I went for a big walk yesterday. So every place I can walk or drive, there's trails here everywhere, and it's just the most magical place. In fact, where you were looking, I'll spill the beans here, but that's Joni Mitchell's property, and where she wrote a great deal of most of her songs. And it's such a creative place. It's just incredible. But something I've been wanting to tell you for a long time is when I went to Greece one time, not on the trip with you, but just on my own, I went to the place where Socrates taught. Now, see, my memory's not so great about things as yours is, but taught Aristotle.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes. Socrates, and it was in a cave, and it was just the most incredible thing because you could see like the little stone seat inside this cave, that's where he probably imparted a lot of his knowledge and wisdom. And it's a place that I'll go in my notes and find it, but I'm sure you would really enjoy going there because you get how the intelligence was right coming out of the landscape, It doesn't surprise me. I love what you've been sharing about what Einstein's habits were and walking around, and I'm going to start walking barefoot more and see what happens.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you, Beverly. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for coming to my house.
Okay. Good. Okay, so I think maybe that's enough for today, and we'll gather again next month in May, and we'll see you then. And in the meantime, on our Facebook page, you can make any comments or raise any questions about our presentation today. And I've really enjoyed being with you. Someone asked me the other day, how long does it take you to get together one of these presentations? And I don't really, at this stage of my life, I don't really talk about anything unless I'm deeply drawn to it, and so I take a fairly long period of time to steep myself in the subject that we're exploring. And so we'll move on to the next subject, and I don't recall what it is right now, but we'll gather next month in May. So goodbye, everybody.